so much. It's so good to sit here and chat with all of you. And we've all sort of seen the traffic and we got here and we made it, and that's the main thing. So let's start with the discussion. But before we do that, I know the MC's introduced everybody, but can you all tell the audience a little bit about yourself? What is it that you like to do outside of work? And if you weren't doing this, if this is not what you were doing, what would you be doing? So let's start with you.
Thank you so much. I am Jaikishan. I work with Nestle. I've been with the organization for almost 12 years now. And if I was not working with Nestle, I would be teaching in an MBA school. I love to teach. So I use also those same techniques to, coach and work with my teams, and that is what would I be doing. Thank you.
Thanks, Jyotsna. Good morning. I'm Girish. I'm working as a Vice President Supply Chain at Barbeque Nation. If I'm not doing this, I read a lot in my off time. Whenever I read a lot. So I think I would probably be also like to write, and maybe like Jaikishan might end up teaching as well, because
I'm Ambika Satapathy. I'm the co-founder of FreshR, and if I was not running FreshR, I would probably be a farmer. In fact, before we started FreshR, we had our poultry farms. So lots of poultry, lots of dogs, good food. That's what I'm passionate about.
Fantastic. That was very nice to hear, farmer. Hi, I'm Darpan from Coca-Cola. I think I'm either going to join Girish writing the book if I wasn't doing supply chain at Coca-Cola or any other organization, or I'd actually be in the jungle doing some birding and photographing some wildlife. That would be nice.
Hi, my name is Shampayan Ghosh. I head the supply chain in Mother Dairy. If I were to choose a profession, if not in this supply chain function, so I would have been a musician, because I played music till class 12. But after that, professional commitments and all, it has lagged behind. So thank you. Thank you so much.
It's so good to have all of these, a musician, a farmer. Can I come be a farmer with you?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's a lot of hard work, let me warn you.
I'm all good for that, yeah. It's wonderful. Okay, so let's start with the discussion. We'll start with a use case. So when we talk about building efficiencies in cold chain, nothing better than discussing a use case, especially a challenge that you all have overcome, a recent challenge in your practice, and especially now after COVID, all that has happened. You're trying to deal with the demand. There's been, the wars. There's been all this economic sort of uncertainty, all of that. So, one thinks about how. So let's start with Girish. Would you like to start with a use case?
Sure. So I think this challenge which we had solved to some extent has been very close to my heart for two reasons. One, we never planned it as a supply chain solve in the first place. We were trying to solve two major problems which are at an outlet level. One was the amount of wet waste generation which was happening. Because we were doing our fruits and vegetables, each of our outlets. So we were generating somewhere close to 4.5 tons worth of wet waste in every one of our outlets because of just all kinds of wet waste overall. The second part where we were having a separate discussion was kitchen productivity. So there's something called a mise à plat, which is a preparation process for chefs who come in almost 1.5 hours before anybody in the organization comes in just to do a process for just preparing the product as well. So coming specific to a category of fruits and vegetables, which most of you would know about it, is that yield from a particular product is actually only around 45-55% for some of the products like broccoli or a cauliflower. So whenever you're doing supply chain, you're actually carrying the product along with all the things you can't use as well. So when we're trying to minimize this as a project mode, one of the things which we started seriously exploring was, is there a benefit in doing this processing closer to farms and moving them to cold chain? So when we started doing this project almost 2 to 3 years back, so we had obviously had the sweet corns which are already sorted for the industry, but we had specific products like the items which can go on a skewer in a Barbeque Nation outlet, and so there were sizes, there were specifications. So when we went to an industrial cutting, So essentially, we looked at indoor belts and farming belts. So where there were food technology parks which were getting added. So we started working with these people to develop our own products, our own specifications. And suddenly we realized that these players could actually contribute in a positive way to the environment as well, because whatever products which were taken close to harvest during a season, they were getting cut, industrially processed, IQF done, and we were getting our frozen vegetables and fruits almost fresher than something which you get in a city. And then we moved it to cold chain. So what this did was, for us, it also had a lot of economic benefit, which was not the intention when we started out. So we reduced almost like 25% of our wet waste, which was generating just because we were doing this cutting and disposing of in cities. And unfortunately, cities don't have a very great mechanism of disposing wet waste as such. I mean, you can see the landfills on the way to Gurgaon, right? So that we almost zero wet waste generation from these products because they were just consumable. We were only moving what we required. We also reduced your man hours, which was going into your misa pla. So almost 77% of the misa pla time came down. So now it's only the potato and vegetables, which we don't want to move to frozen. And plus, we had this added advantage that we were now carrying. So if it's a 55% yield product, we were carrying only 55% logistics across. The remaining products I don't have to worry about. I don't have to worry about reliability. And since we were doing it closer to the season, harvest season, we were also making sure the soil cycle was okay. So we are not doing it we don't try to unnaturally extend shelf lives or make it not available. So this is one of those cases which we found was satisfyingly solved, and there's something which we are continuously working on is how do we add more products which can solve both economically, make economic sense as well as for us, the product. So 2018 was when we had we started with this particular journey. Yeah. And now we have around more than 6 to 7 products which we have solved as a product which can go with almost zero preparation time at our outlets.
Okay. See, I mean, I joined Mother Dairy in 2005, almost 17 years in cold chain business. So I've seen from the nascent stage till this stage, however this cold chain has progressed. And we handle different type of products, starting from ice cream, starting from fresh dairy. So -20, -25, -18, +4, +8. So whatever type of products are there, so different temperatures, what we handle. One of the interesting case studies was something like that. We want to launch in Calcutta our fresh dairy range of products, particularly a product called Mishti Doi, which is very popular in East. So when we asked for a factory to our management, or to the board rather, so obviously the numbers were not very secured because Calcutta is a very, very big unorganized sector. Whoever knows Calcutta, they know it very well. That's a mainly unorganized market of the sweets industry. So the challenge was something like this. We used to produce here in a place called Pilkua, which is near Hapur, our entire fresh dairy products like dahi, lassi, chach, curd, etc., which moves in 4 degrees. So the challenge was, if a product is getting produced, let us say in Monday around 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock, a batch is getting reduced. So we have to supply the product next day, 24 hours, it should reach in Calcutta. So we tied up with, I'm thankful to the management because we didn't look at the cost because it was a project for 6 months. So we tied up with Jet, Indigo, Spice, and all the guys who were there at that time. And I still remember my first load in Jet Airways was 160 kg when I first took it from Pilkua to Delhi Airport. Delhi Airport, the product flew to Calcutta Airport. Calcutta Airport, it went to the Calcutta factory and to the local market. The success of the program was, at the same time, when the product was available next day at Delhi market, at the same time, the product was available at Calcutta market, which is around 1,500 kilometers from Delhi. And within 2 to 3 years' time, the numbers shoot up because I don't want to name the other competitors, but in that category, we were number one from that day one. And today we are doing around 40 to 50 metric ton of business, which started from 160 kg one day. And mind it, the business which we drive it has to be very, very meticulous and sacrosanct kind of thing. The stock needs to be delivered at 6 o'clock. I heard some of the gentlemen told sometime back in the last forum by the time may be a constraint in, see, supply chain is driven by 3 factors, what we call it, CQD, cost, quality, and delivery. And most of the people, 95% of the people will say that you can only get maximum 2 or 1, you cannot get 3 at the same time. But I mean, we are doing it almost, we just celebrated our 50 years 2 days back only, Mother Dairy 1974, what we started. So there are a lot many case studies are like that, like in one single city, Delhi NCR, we are doing around 2,000 crore business in a year with 1,900 to 2,000 shops. I mean, I'm the largest retailer of Delhi also. I manage around 1,900, 200 shops. So every year the shops or the kiosks are increasing, but our space is not increasing because it's a very different type of tertiary management products. So managing supply chain, increasing the strength of the vehicles, choosing partners, okay, and increasing the shops. So these also we are managing for last 2 to 3 years. One last instance I want to say, during the COVID, when a lot of companies got shut up, I mean, COVID gave the platform whereby all the companies came again to the startup mark, and again they started the journey from zero only, all the companies, at least the ice cream companies which I have seen. Now, our product dropped by, ice cream category dropped by more than 100 crores, which is around 25% of our annual turnover, which is a big number. So what do we do? So we need the numbers. So we tried to invest in the sweets and the bread category, and we are only selling in 2,000 booths in Delhi NCR, and the ice cream business has gone back to 400 crores now. We are the 3rd largest ice cream company in the country. And meanwhile, we could develop a 70 to 80 crore business of new categories in one city by only doing 2,000 shops. So these are some of the innovations or renovations or outside the box thinking what we have done. And today we are the 2nd largest dairy company in the country after Amul. We are about to touch around 14,000 crores.
Jyotsna, let me just add to that. I think one very important point in cold chain that we see in the industry, and this word value chain we use within the supply chain ecosystem very loosely. But one stream which really does require a value chain conversation is cold chain. Usually when within our country, be it within the forum of industry or be it within the forum of government, when you talk of cold chain, the conversation will stop either on storage or it will get picked up on transportation and stop there. But the entire conversation of having produced the mishti doi at 4 degrees and then ensuring that actually lands at Calcutta at 4 degrees is an entirely different conversation of cold chain, which we really need to get into in our country for sure for now.
Sure. So unlike the other stalwarts on this panel, we entered the Delhi market just about a year ago. Previously we were primarily focused on East India. We had our farms in East India. We were very general trade focused. And when we entered the Delhi NCR market, it took us a few months just to understand what is the challenge, to answer your point, right? And one of the things we saw, we are primarily, if you look at our categories, we are focused on meat, and we are now adding some fruits and vegetables and value-added dairy as well to our product portfolio. But a large part of our volumes continues to be chicken, mutton, fishery products. What we saw was that, and just to add to her point, the conversation around cold chain is a conversation on trust, right? When not everybody or not every organization has the capabilities that Girish has developed, where they go right till the farm, get the cauliflower cut as per their specification, get it blast frozen near the source, have it transported in vehicles which is under their control, then store it and then distribute it, right? Ideally, there should be a company which does all of this, and a good client should be able to trust that yes, my product has been processed according to my specifications, stored properly, packaged properly, transported properly, whether it's at a +4 degrees or a -18 degrees, and delivered to me at the right time, right? When we first entered the Delhi market, we saw that a large part of the country is serviced, when you look at frozen meat, is serviced by what are known as the mandiwalas, right? And why is it serviced by that category of suppliers? Because they are the cheapest in this country, right? And then you have some organized suppliers, let's say the big exporters or the big meat processors, whom quality conscious clients go for. What the market lacked, and this was the challenge, was a mid-market player. Somebody who can have a mid-market pricing, still maintain that trust and that quality and that specification. Not that if the product is getting frozen in the mandi, along with in a 2 kg pack of chicken, there is 300 grams of water. You won't know till you thaw the product in your kitchen, right? And actually cook it. You will not know that there is 300 grams or 200 grams of water in it. Or you asked for, a fully trimmed, clean product, but there is lots of untrimmed pieces in it. Fresh has been mixed with frozen during processing itself. Old batches have been recycled. So there were so many malpractices that there was no trust in the system. And only somebody who, cared very little about quality would go for suppliers like that or companies like that. So I think that was the challenge that had to be solved for, where we say, okay, there's FreshR in the middle. You don't need to worry. You give me your spec. If you give me a minimum order quantity, I will make it according to your spec, and we will make sure that the entire value chain is maintained throughout.
So, we've spoken about all the use case scenarios, all the challenges. Let's move on to policy for a minute, because all this is good, but you do need the support and the backing of certain regulations. Also, if there are any global practices that you all think of, which we can sort of use and adopt, it would be good to hear.
So there are 3 elements to it. The first element is like policy, where we decide what we want to do. The second element is regulation. We define the rules of the game. And the third is financing, and these 3 all go together. And like you rightly said, that we have to see supply chains which, say, are more developed in the western part of the world or so on, wherever these are more developed. Now I'll take an example, like there were times when we used to buy unbranded flours, we used to buy unbranded pulses. But as the consumer matured, we moved on to branded pulses, we moved on to branded flours and so on. So today, very few people will be going to the chakkiwala to get the flour done. Similarly, in a cold chain, like Darpan rightly said, we were stuck at the cold storage concept. So there was no end-to-end, and there was no demand for it. Now once the consumer becomes more aware and more mature, the demand has started coming in. Once the demand starts coming in, the need for policy has come in. Now, again, adding to what she rightly said, that it was mainly unorganized, like any industry is when it grows. But I think the time has come to define the rules of how this industry will be run. From a policy perspective, it is clear that we have to have an integrated, so the important word is integrated. It has to be end-to-end. It has to be a cold chain concept. The regulation has to be defined, which is in favor of big guys as well as the MSMEs and the smaller guys, so that everyone can participate. It should not become a chain which only supports the bigger people. So it has to have a lot of third-party investment, so that it becomes common infrastructure which all the 3 can use. And the biggest challenge we will face is financing, because any investments needs a return on investment. The consumer is maturing, but has not reached there where you can quickly go with the kind of financing which is needed, because it's not cheap to make these value chains. It starts from one end of the country, ends in the other. So that is the final leg. And one more thing we have to see, we're seeing a lot of demand for imported stuff, or stuff which is produced in one part of the country and goes to the other part of the country. There used to be times, when fruits and vegetables used to get seasonally. Now we expect everything to be available throughout the year. Yeah. So that demand has also come in. So if we set these 3 pieces right, I think the consumer is maturing to reach that level.
I think 2 more pieces I'd like to add to it, and one of them is what very likely Ambika and Girish ended up touching, which was what's happening at the first mile. We usually talk of the last mile, but in cold chain you have to start from the first mile. So one of the pieces, and I'll take an example, you mentioned global practices. There's something very interesting that China is doing. They've set up these parks which they call the demonstration zones. In those demonstration zones, they're setting up cold chain infrastructure as a demonstration piece for the system to get aware. And that's exactly the requirement that we also require as a country. And we require not just in the urban, because we are we are like the top producers in agriculture. We actually require this in the rural zones also. Once you have demonstration zones set up for these farmers and for people, be it poultry, be it vegetables, fruit, vegetables, whatever, people can actually see firsthand what happens with the cold chain. How does that bring value to the value chain of cold chain? And that demonstration zones will help a lot. And the other piece I think that this forum will of course eventually touch upon is the digital technology. How can we leverage the digital technology and ensure that there is monitoring happening, there's tracking happening, which is very essential to cold chain. So I think both these things will eventually start becoming a part of our policies, because as he was mentioning, the conversation has started. The conversation industry has started, COVID has helped fuel it, and we are on that track. So one of these few things we'll start seeing in the policy change for sure.
Just wanted to add one piece which on policies and global best practices. So while we are trying to get to the traceability in a cold chain, like what we said, that starts from the farm. And when you're talking about a poultry or a frozen item like a fish or an imported item, that batch level traceability, when you come more and more downstream, is something which has a lot of financial implication as well as requirement for us. So just to give an example, so if I have 20 outlets in a city, if I find one product, say a frozen chicken has been spoiled, for me to understand whether it happened in that one outlet or in the cold chain from my warehouse or my cold room to my outlet, or it happened right from my hub to this, we are talking about a loss from 5,000 rupees to a 50 lakh rupees consignment loss. So essentially this traceability as a system, we aspire to do that. We are working with bigger players, but the smaller players need to be empowered to do that traceability. And that's something which, as an organization policy, we require today, especially if you're companies venturing into cold chain.
I just want to sum up also whatever I have listened from the distinguished panelists. So relating to this end-to-end cold chain, what we talk about, okay. Now, if we talk about a supply chain cost of any ambient trade business, we talk about any of the big players or the Indian companies also, it operates generally at a supply chain cost of 3 to 4% when we talk about an ambient products. When we talk about a cold chain business, depending on what temperature you are working with. So I met one of the gentlemen who was a very senior position in Pepsi. He came to my office and he got shocked. He's a CEO of one of the big ice cream companies in the country. So he went from Pepsi to that company and he found the supply chain cost is 12%, 13%, 14%. So he has been worked in 15 to 20 years in a Pepsi at a 4 to 5% cost, and suddenly he's going to a 15, 16% cost. So he was new to the industry. So, I mean, the money will come between the cost of the production, procurement, logistics, and the money which you are charging from the consumers. The gap is basically whereby you have to earn the profit, you have to pay salary to the people. So how do we bridge up this 4% versus 12 to 13% of the cost? Because you are in a very sensitive market. And mind it, you are not selling a detergent worth 200 bucks. You are selling a product worth 15 rupees, 20 rupees to, I mean, I sell my ice cream impulse category, highest payout price is 70 rupees, 70. Okay. So these are one of few of the challenges what I have faced in the long run of in the industry. Secondly, about the traceability. Now, when we talk about the traceability, government FSSAI laws are very, very rigid. How do we match up? In a cold chain industry in India, particularly in a -20, -25 degree, no traceability is there. If any of the companies are claiming, it is not the right thing. So what happens? You get an invoice ready, there's a different batch at the invoice, and there is a different product, because you cannot match it between a batch at the physical cold room of -20, 25 degree, depending on some uneducated laborers, and the product is going to a consumer through your transportation chain. So, this law was passed in way back in almost 13, 14 years, but still now I have not been able to execute it. I've met a lot of people, a lot of consultants, but it's not that easy. So one thing is the cost at one hand, one thing is the FSSI norms or the regulatory norms, and one thing what she said, the end-to-end cold chain. It's not only the forward cold chain, it starts from the back-end cold chain. We are in a country whereby we sell fruits and vegetables on the road, and we sell shoe worth 5,000 rupees in a cold room, in a mall, in an air-conditioned atmosphere. So we belong to that country. So with the support of the government and with the support of all the big houses which are present in the country, the companies are growing, but maybe the space is not that much.
I'll just quickly add to that on the regulatory thing, which is, it's a delicate matter to tread, which is taxation, okay? So what happens is, at the end of the day, unless you want cold chain infrastructure and products to be limited to the big guys, okay, that, good large companies like a Mother Dairy or a Barbeque Nation can buy high quality frozen products. If you want it to become a mass category, if you want that frozen product should reach, retail shops across the country, having a tax on an organized frozen supplier versus, an untaxed, unorganized player, you're essentially discouraging the penetration of the branded frozen category, right? For example, in fruits and vegetables or meat, you have fresh, which is non-taxed. You have unorganized frozen, unbranded frozen, which is not taxed. And then you have, branded frozen, which attracts tax. So I don't know how to solve for this. The government will tax because it needs its revenue, it's very natural. But there shouldn't be a perverse incentive for the sector to not get organized, right? So I think that's a challenge for policymakers to think about.
I think another piece, so when I touched in policy, I touched upon digital technologies, and that needs to find space in the policy now for our country. One of the things which we in our organization are working upon, and I think a lot of organizations are now starting to work upon, is leveraging AI and utilizing blockchain. Blockchain in itself is such a huge topic, but specifically for cold chain, the traceability that it brings with it, the monitoring that it brings with it, that entire value can easily be leveraged in cold chain. So I think that's one of the technologies that we need to look into. The other piece, I think, is packaging. And we very extensively work on packaging, and we've got experts sitting there. And I was just hearing last week, there is a new conversation that has started in the industry on packaging, which now goes beyond sustainability. So we've talked of recyclable, we talked of refillables, we've talked of all of that. Now the next conversation on packaging that I'm hearing is the conversation on active packaging and the conversation on smart packaging. The smart packaging, of course, is like you hear of your smart appliances, something that can be monitored. It's got sensors, it's got communication tracking. You can converse with that packaging. The other part is the active packaging, which is very interesting, where you've got enzymes that get leaked into the product and ensure that there is oxygen scavengers there. They will ensure that the moisture is getting managed accordingly. So I think we are standing at that spur of the moment where the industry is shaping up, it's reshaping up. It's for the government regulatories, it's for the industry associations and people like Businessworld to now come together and ensure there is enough conversation happening around this so that the regulation moves in that fashion and shape. So that's my bit on the technology part.
So I think in cold chain, so obviously visibility becomes a very paramount what we require today in terms of temperature controls or monitoring systems. So I think one of the things, while not exactly packaging, what we are trying to do is also move more towards logistic partners who have end-to-end logs. So for us, when we had to do in 2018, when we started this migration to cold chain, we had to put up infra across all our outlets just to do the safe handling of frozen products. So you have a thawing process, you have overnight chillers that had to come in place. So now now we have a system on top which we're working on, some pilots on IoT-based temperature monitoring. So which is going to send out alerts if there is any kind of an abuse or product quality. So these are something which are required today, and I'm talking about just my outlets today. Now I have the same thing with cold rooms. I have the same thing with upstream manufacturers also. So this is something which is not here yet, but we have to consciously make these strides if we are sure about having our supply chain move towards cold chain. So that's something which we have done.
Because this is a conversation on technology, we are a startup, we are a young company, we are venture capital funded. And to add to what both of them said, this is a very cost conscious country, right? These supply chains are not built cheap. And what happens is if I spend 30, 40 crores in setting up a processing plant, like some of the big guys do, I'm going to have to amortize that cost and price it into my product, right? How do we use technology to reduce the capital expenditure that is required? How do we use technology to use the SME infrastructure that already exists in our ecosystem to actually bring down the cost, use capacity more efficiently, and use capital more efficiently, and therefore be able to price our products in a way that we can have mass market adoption, right? I think the conversation on the use of technology is moving. Of course, the focus on digitization, because that has not yet been complete, traceability, tracking. But apart from digitization, also how technology can enable capital efficiency. So I think that's something that is being thought about now.
I think somebody touched the subject on that. See, when we talk about, we have big players, we have small players in the business. Can the companies, when I talk about as a user, I want the compliance, I want the AI, I want everything. But can I afford a big player to work with me? The reason for that is, if I ask this question, or if I want to sum up like this, 90% of the business, whether I talk about primary storage, I talk about primary logistics, I talk about hub and spoke model, I talk about secondary logistics. This is the chain. 90% of the chain is controlled by unorganized players because no company, whether big or small, are interested to pay price what some of the big brands are asking for. So this is an unorganized market which was there 15 years back. And even after 15 years also, I see maybe 1 or 2% movement has happened. That's why the big players are finding it really tough to resist. So if they resist, I mean, where are the players? The players with non-compliance, the players who want to quote a very lesser price. So they are your partners, what you call it. We don't call it vendors anymore, we call it your partners. So these guys, if the big players, they don't come into this segment. So whatever we have discussed so far, I mean, we have talked about the compliance, the regulatory, the AIs of the things, but ultimately the baton is getting exchanged from 1, 2, 3, 4. And even one of the things out of the 4 batons is compromised, is cheap, is very economical. The whole chain gets affected. Yep.
Yeah, I think the way I'd like to summarize it is looking future back and looking forward to the future. The one piece is the ground reality, which is our regulations and policies need to start moving from minimum standards to mandatory standards. And that's the piece which is missing. Once that ground has been set and corrected for the entire value chain that gets involved in cold chain, the industry will start moving. And the other piece that will support it is again digital, and I cannot harp on it enough, because that will ensure the quality that is so essential to this entire piece. So both, I think, making policies mandatory and making the digital leveraging the digital to its max are the two things that will bring the shape for this industry.
So, as a small company in this space, there's only so much gyan we can give to the industry. But I think for us, I mean, if you look at what we are planning to do over the next 2 or 3 or 5 years, we want to come up as a one-stop solution for any bulk buyer of frozen products. And what I mean by that is all the challenges that were raised on this panel, can we solve for that? Whether it's product quality, whether it is trust and traceability, whether it is price competitiveness, whether it's reliability, whether it is distribution, and, most importantly, service. There is a understanding, an implicit understanding, especially amongst the organized folks that he mentioned in the market, that we are selling a product. Hum to maal bech rahe hain. Right? But you're not just selling a product, you're also selling services. Whether someone asks for digitization or tracking or give me a proper invoice or reply to my email, everything is a service, right? Can we, over the next 5 years, be a one-stop solution for any bulk buyer for frozen products, and sort of, that's their peace of mind. They don't have to think that should we go to the farmer, build a 2,000 kilometer back end, how do we manage the products? Those problems should get solved for. So that's really the future that young companies like us are looking for in this sector. And thanks to the fact that 90% of the sector is unorganized, we feel we have a chance at giving it a shot.
I'm going to go much more operational in this. So we are in 81 cities. We have a network of some work in 30 cold rooms. So for us, the challenge is across, when you go beyond the metros, tier 2, tier 3 cities, people who are handling cold chain products are not exactly skilled in terms of product and product knowledge or product understanding. Somebody feels it's very, very, very okay to just take the cold chain out of the thing and unload it on a pallet and keep it there. So those are things which can impact the product itself. And so we need to build that skill set of the people who are working on cold chain products. And we're working with a few of the companies, some of the vendors ourselves, trying to educate them to become more adept at handling cold chain products. The other part is also with respect to since you are, for what problems the big players face is that if I move to cold chain and I have to ship to a tier 2 city or a tier 3 city, there's not much takers for the product, and we don't have a reefer network which goes from tier 1 to tier 2, and you have huge cost and lead times which is happening. So essentially, while we have optimized for FTLs and in metros, the moment it goes to tier 2, tier 3 cities, you have to build that structure. So we're looking more towards having a structured network where we can operate without incurring too much cost to serve.
I think two things go hand in hand. So we have to have the right partners in the system, the right infrastructure. By infrastructure, we mean the physical devices which are needed to maintain these cold chains. And the third was the entire ecosystem that you discussed. This matures on the one side, and on the other side is the life choices that consumers are making and the kind of lifestyle changes which are coming. So the demand will get generated from how consumers have changed their lifestyle and what kind of products they want. While on the other hand, it's the supply side where we'll have to work on the infrastructure and the other two elements that we spoke. And it will take some time, before that pull comes in. Right now, it's more of a push, and everybody is trying to see how to improve things. But once the consumer pull starts coming in, rapid scale up will happen. And that's when, people who have spent 10, 15, 20 years doing this work will really be able to ramp up versus people who will just like to get into the bandwagon later on.
Event team. So I think let's wrap this up. Thank you so much. We've touched upon really important aspects of policy, of technology, and the future focus. I'm sure everybody can just, write in. If they write in to us, we'll send on the questions to you. Thank you so much.